Welcome to the Blockbusters and Birdwalks podcast. I am the curator, Garrett Chaffin-Quiray. Today we have a conversation with a friend, Ed Rosa.
That's me. Hi. My filmmaking partner and I have a YouTube channel, Toothless Richard Productions, where you can see a number of our short films.
When I began publishing Blockbusters and Birdwalks, it was a hosting site for essays and thoughts that I had, and that branched off into making podcasts. Then we agreed to do a partnership, and separately I have another partnership with a friend, Richard Ryan, making the High-Low Bro Show. One thing that Richard said to me in our last recording concerning the Big Dollhouse is the following.
I think that 1971 is in many ways a crux point when American counterculture, and specifically the anti-Vietnam War movement, has begun to get a little sour.
As always happens, the counterculture has sort of become the culture, and there's a lot on society's plate.
Duck, you sucker. It is so very much going over the same territory of the Wild Bunch. But let's just jump right to it.
Rod Steiger?
Rod Steiger.
A favorite of ours.
He's terrific.
Rod Steiger returns.
And James Coburn just giving these withering looks at one another. I haven't thought this before, but I now believe James Coburn is one of the greatest, most handsome men who's ever lived.
Oh, yeah, and he's a real badass, too.
This movie is maybe not explicitly meant to be a queer movie, but I couldn't help but judge it that way.
Yeah.
The love relationship that they share.
Genuine.
And then the way that I have retconned this movie into the shoehorn of the three-way love relationship of Jules and Jim meets Brokeback Mountain, this time in Mexico during the Revolution.
That time, it's like, that's why Red Dead Redemption, the game, is like set in like 1910, and it's kind of dealing with the same thing, because it's really that section of time, you know, because what they say, World War I is like where they rode in on horseback and they rode out in tanks,
yeah.
Right? So this is a major transitional period, and like truly where like the Old West kind of died.
The alternative titles are A Fistful of Dynamite, thus it's the third part of the Fistful trilogy from Leone, or else it's sometimes called Once Upon a Time, The Revolution, which ties in with his Once Upon a Time in America and Once Upon a Time in the West.
Yes, because this is sort of allegedly the second part of kind of an unofficial trilogy that possibly other people have suggested and not himself.
Right. May exist, but that's, again, retconning the career of, only 8 or 9 different films he made in his life. Nonetheless, what we've got is a story of a Mexican outlaw who wants to rob a bank he remembers seeing when he was a boy. This is Rod Steiger's adult character, Juan Miranda. He bumps into, through circumstances, an Irish nationalist hiding out in Mexico named John, or Sean Mallory, that's James Coburn, who's an explosive specialist who always is carrying with him whiskey and nitroglycerin. Don't mix those up, or you'll have some serious rot gut. So our boy Juan wants John. Can you see it, Ed?
Yeah.
Juan John? Can you see it? Juan wants John to help him rob this bank. John doesn't want to do it because he has foul memories of a former Confederate of his back in Ireland, his best friend, and the other man who loved a woman they had in common.
Yeah, polyamory. Yet another thing that would have not flown in America,
right.
Which I imagine is why that, at the end, that's one of the scenes that was chopped for like earlier releases.
And given the material that's here, it's quite a good movie, but it does demand that you accept the conventions of the Western are going to be stretched, because Leone was known for that. We learn about John Mallory's backstory with flashbacks that are in slow motion, with gooey Ennio Morricone music, which is wonderful.
A little Vaseline on the lens.
Completely. And he's got his hair dyed. This is an original Silver Fox of the silver screen, who's given darker hair. He shaves his face. He does indeed appear more youthful as a consequence. And those are interspersed with some of the present action. We don't learn how polyamorous his earlier life was until almost the end of the movie, which helps define the fact that he's stepped into a new love relationship with Juan. In the end, they do undertake this bank robbery. There are complications, and along the way, they're constantly dealing with different factions in the Mexican Revolution, including the Federales, including German military personnel who are there supporting different aspects of blah, blah, blah. That's what finally this thing turns into. And our survivor, spoiler, is Juan. There are explosive moments of violent excess, which I have been trained to enjoy as violent excess, but also as the symbolic ejaculation. Back to the sort of way this movie is presented, the way that I am given to watch a Western. Perhaps most notable of all is that concluding murder where Juan shoots the German leader who has just shot John in the back 3 times. The Trinity. Yeah. And we watch Coburn gasp and nearly ask for a cigar and say things like, "I'm going out, man, I'm over with." But then Juan grabs a machine gun and shoots the German repeatedly until finally he gets out of a sight line and falls over a cliff and the body is just mangled. The excesses of that kind of violence causes me just to feel like, thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah.
I really enjoy what's happening.
Well, because, I mean, really, like, in that situation, you couldn't shoot that guy enough.
Yeah.
Even if the first bullet kills him, that's not a satisfactory enough catharsis.
It's bloody, but it is a notation for vigilantism, which in 71 was just blown up. I mean, Dirty Harry was happening. You know, all these things.
Taxi Driver, or was that 70?
That was around the corner. That's coming up
70,
in a few years. But Billy Jack is in the air. I mean, these things are going on, where the righteous bloodshed of our hero, whether a morally good person or a morally bad person, is nonetheless our point of view. And when we understand that Juan loves John, and John loves Juan, and John is dying, let's also pull back for a second and realize that John, as we've stated, is an explosives expert. So there's a lot of things that get blown up in this movie. And
thank God, it was so awesome, and no CGI.
Yeah, they
built a bridge to blow a bridge up, and it's magnificent.
And the explosions happen, as you say, practically. Like there's a scene. I think it's the first big explosion. We have the announcement of John's coming. He's on a motorcycle,
which is one of the coolest character introductions ever.
He's throwing nitroglycerin bombs on a hillside to get the attention of Juan's desperados who have just robbed some people on the train.
He's like Tim from Monty Python and the Holy Grail, just boom, 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 like blowing everything up.
And it could very easily have come from this because that Holy Grail follows this movie.
Yes, that's 75,
So he shows up, and then, of course, Juan's like, this looks great. Tell me more about the explosions. Don't want to. Back and forth. Well, John ends up blowing up the caboose of this train car.
Or no, that was a super, luxury stagecoach.
Right.
The kind of which I had no idea they made, but the more I thought about it, it actually did seem feasible.
And as he's walking towards the camera, it blows up. So it's tens of yards behind him. I mean, imagine putting your talent at risk for that stunt, and it's done with some slow motion. It's just great. And there are other explosions of similar effect with in that sequence with the bridge that you're talking about. Juan and John are perched on a hillside over a singular point of crossing a dry riverbed. A bridge is there. The Germans come with their heavy vehicles, their tanks, and there's a bunch of soldiers, and there's people on horseback. And the bridge explodes around them.
Yeah.
And they got to keep acting and running around while they're taking strafing machine gun fire.
Yeah. And the horses are going bananas.
And everything's going bananas in single takes with, you can see multiple cameras tracking this because you couldn't have done it more than once.
Oh, no.
Yet it holds together real well. I'm deeply impressed by that, and especially the older I get and the deeper into the digiscape we go, when I see practical effects, I'm just thinking, that's terrific.
Yeah.
The coordination, the trust.
I think a lot of people sort of take movies for granted because there's so many of them and they're so readily available. I think the value of that practicality is lost on a lot of people today. Like, no. They built a bridge to actually load it up with real-life dynamite
and blow
it up. It's
right.
not just a bunch of dudes sitting in an air-conditioned computer lab.
Yeah.
That's an art that it sucks that we've almost lost entirely.
And we've lost patience for an alternative. But there's two examples of this old-fashioned, high-end technique that I want to point out. I'm sure you're going to agree with me, so I'm going to get your head ready to nod, loosen up the neck. One is the value of a quality actor.
Oh, yeah.
And these are terrific actors, but on top of them being quality actors, the camera is often so very close to them that there are moments when you know that focus is pulled to the top of their nose, and they'll lean back, and their eyes will go out of focus, and they'll push forward again to come back into focus to deliver their line. They're so camera aware of those focal planes.
Right.
And it's so unusual the way that some of these scenes are constructed in close-up. It's a gimmick that Leone helped create as an icon of the spaghetti western, and people like Tarantino have used it to their own great success.
Oh, yeah.
But they're doing it with old-fashioned cameras. They don't have the computer to help you find and keep everything in focus, and there's something sweet about losing focus.
Yeah.
The other thing that this movie does well, aside from those close-ups and good actors, it has occasional tracking shots that are really extraordinary. And the one I'm thinking of, after Juan and John massacre this German military unit trying to cross that bridge, the survivors round up Juan's desperados, which include all of his children and his old man,
his
and
family,
murder them in a cave.
Yes.
When we bump into this slaughtered group of people, all of the performers have various blood markings, not as bloody as we have seen in years since, but it's plain they have been gunned down in cold blood, trapped. And their eyes are open. And the camera, for I think almost a minute, tracks over them, but you don't see the chests swell. It's like they
like his youngest, like because we
and you push into people's individual bodies to identify characters we've known earlier in the movie. They're now deceased.
Yeah.
And it all resolves coming back to Steiger, who is dealing with the loss of every person he has ever loved.
Which is, he even had remarked earlier, like, my family is my country.
Here comes John with, all of his expertise in weaponry. They've just gunned down this military unit. John recognizes what Juan is going through, but we have just been delivered the goods. We have seen the depredations of the enemy, and none of it is broken up. There is no editorial strategy to get us a cutaway. We just see it in total.
I was really impressed, because we linger on his youngest son.
Yeah.
I'm always impressed by child actors that do actually a really good job, because there are so many that don't. Yeah, that little kid, he doesn't breathe, he doesn't blink.
Right.
He looks dead.
These little formal traits of how the movie is assembled and the choices made to deliver it this way, they're breathtaking, although you can't miss it, because you're like, bunch of dead people in a cave, big deal. Explosion on a bridge, big deal.
Boring.
Guys, eyeballs staring at each other, big deal. But it's really difficult to do, and to do well and to carry it all off. And also, there are these moments of really gross montage. Early in the piece, before we know what Juan is all about, we haven't even met John yet. Juan is picked up by these Richie Riches on a train, and he's sort of a pity case, but he's clearly just completely dirty. They're treating him like an animal.
Well, more than a pity case, I think it was the guy, one of the two guys driving the stagecoach. He even has that line about how, because he's telling him to kick rocks at first, and then he sees him scratching his ass. And then that's when he changes his mind, because he just wants to see the reaction of the Richers inside the stagecoach when they're forced to be stuck with this guy.
And so you're watching from his point of view, these rich people, they're throwing at him a whole bunch of different racial epithets.
Right.
Just like them niggas
Bruce.
we got back home.
Animal.
The visual track is watching them eat, and we're way too up in their mouths.
Oh, yeah.
And it goes on, and it goes on, and it goes on, and we get the point. But, learning how excessive these traits can be is part of the style of Leone in this movie. And you add to that what must be hundreds of extras in certain scenes. They go to trains, they go to town, there are the wars
it's
that
a
they get
huge
involved
production,
with.
yeah.
In the season this comes out, it's a good Western. I made a list, I dig that kind of stuff, but there's the great Northfield, Minnesota raid, Chato's Land. You get Deep Throat, and you get Frenzy, and then you get Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, but then you get Joe Kidd, and you get Deliverance, which I argue is a Western. You get Junior Bonner.
I would agree. And So is Junior Bonner.
Yeah. You get Sounder, which in its way is a Western. Now, this is all interpretable through Garrett's frame of references, but this is a movie that's trying to consequentially deal with the way that history has acted on the present, in particular through the lives of a certain kind of man. We've seen the framework for this established in something like The Wild Bunch, if not many things before it, because part of the collapse of thinking about the Western, and this is one of the reasons why I think it's an adaptable format to things which are superficially not Westerns. The easiest example that always comes to mind is the movie Aliens. Aliens is a Western.
A Western, pretty much, yeah.
And the reason why is it's dealing with humanity's stretch at the limits of what civilization is as it confronts something that forces that civilization to defend itself.
Right, yeah, and a colonial expansion.
That's right. It's right there in the words.
Right.
The colonists on this moon are assailed by the foreign thing, the xenomorph, which would have been an Indian 50 or 60 years ago, would have been a Mexican in the 70s,
right.
Would have been the you name your group, right? The out-group is always attacking us, and we have to protect us. And what does us represent? It represents the changing of a middle-aged person who's in control, losing their control, losing their marbles. And we have the most interesting combination. A nationalist Irisher and a Mexican who doesn't give a rip about the national government, who, as you say, his family is his nation.
Right.
And it's been taken from him. He will kill all comers except for his bestie, who he loves, but who he loves.
Yeah.
What's valuable about connecting the Irish Revolution with the Mexican Revolution, which were happening at roughly the same time, all of it a lead up to what would become the conflagration of World War I, is these upstanding groups of common people frustrated by the powers that are seemingly crushing them beneath land reforms, beneath the obfuscation of natural resources behind regulations and heavy costs that typical people can't afford, the move to rapidly industrialize the whole of a nation's production away from an agrarian route where it's traditional, people understand how to work the land. So in a generation, if you've been born in 1880 in either of these countries, and that's roughly when these two men would have been born, you have seen the whole climate of your civilization completely change and make you unimportant and obsolete.
Yeah.
But you still got to eat. You still got to feed yourself. In the case of Juan, he's got literal babies. In the case of John, you got this three-way happening with this hot Irish chick until your buddy, who also loves her, and presumably you all love each other, sells you out to the Brits who are trying to crush you, so you kill your bestie and you got to leave the country. Yeah. These two dudes, Juan and John, they don't want to remake the government. In fact, they're disgusted by the duplicity of some of the people they rub up against who are involved in the revolution, because their aims are at least pure and selfish. I want mine for me, Juan, so I can give my children a meal, John, so I can do something that's right to make up for the failure of my buddy selling out our unit, our cell. In the Irish Revolution, I may as well see goodness happen.
Yeah.
Now, is that really what the movie's about? Well, no. But it's made how the engine of the whole thing works. And because this movie comes out in 1971, it's reflecting on 1913, it's worrying about how our modern moment is confronting revolution, is confronting the powers that be, and trying to find a way to change society, but also make sure that you, the stepped-on little person, get something that you need, which is enough to eat, enough wealth to make the future possible. And that can't help but feel like the generational issue of any young group of people coming of age, and we got the boomers.
Yeah.
Having their babies from the middle 60s onward, en masse, realizing that the world they've inherited is the one that's kind of corrupt, kind of goofy. They have problems with it. Now, you compare it against other more popular and more well-known Westerns. Why is this movie not remembered by posterity, except for weirdos like you and me?
The fact that it's a foreign film. And also, too, I do believe that these Italian films are where a lot of American actors went when their careers weren't necessarily doing so well. Honestly, so for this film in particular, it's a little heady. You watch Rio Bravo, and it's not exactly challenging you. Things are black and white. They're not gray.
This is also just filled with a latent kind of racism. It starts with the casting, because Rod Steiger is not Mexican.
Not Mexican. Yeah, right. Painfully evident.
He's doing the bronze thing, right? He's got his button chops. They've been dyed brown.
Yeah.
I'm sure by this stage in his life he was starting to turn gray. This man doesn't belong. He shouldn't have this part. It's just our luck that he's a gifted performer, so you can mostly accept him in the role. But it's also set in Mexico, concerned with Mexican problems. And we don't particularly have a strong suit of believing that Mexico is that valuable in lots of parts of the United States,
Right.
especially in the 50 years since this movie was made. The deeper cut that I've got interpreting this today has to do with the way that the American project and the Mexican project are both the consequence of colonizing powers taking over indigenous populations, importing yet another population through slavery, and establishing huge industrial capabilities. There's so much similarity in that experience. Plus, it's just gratifying when they just lay in with their bombs and machine guns, because the people who are hurting them deserve it. Interestingly, Juan keeps having these plans of taking out this bank to have this big sweep of money, but that bank has been turned into a prison where revolutionaries who have been captured by the state are being housed and not fed. So when he breaks open these vaults, hoping to become rich, he
Just
instead
keeps finding people.
he's making a militia that's quite substantial, and he's becoming a hero of the state quite by accident.
Yeah.
Not the state.
Yeah,
the
he's
federales.
failing up. It's like being there.
He is.
You know, it's like
Completely
this
failing.
simpleton has just like, you know, kind of like accidentally stumbled his way into being like this, you know, celebrity.
That's right. Every time he makes a mistake, it just improves his lot quite by accident. And John is there every time thinking, hey, good for you.
Yeah. Drinking game. Take a drink every time Rod Steiger makes James Coburn laugh or smile and or they look at each other.
you wouldn't make it to the end.
You're right.
This is Blockbusters and Birdwalks, a conversation between Garrett Chaffin-Quiray and
Ed Rosa.
Boop boopity doo.